We are raised on a powerful and enduring story, one woven into the fabric of fairy tales, films, and cultural narratives, that a man's unwavering love, diligent provision, and willingness to sacrifice will be met with a woman's eternal loyalty. This is the fundamental bargain we are taught to believe in. We operate under the assumption that if we pour our entire being into a relationship, giving our best years, our protection, and our resources, we are building an unbreakable bond, a partnership that will withstand any storm. This belief system is so deeply ingrained that to question it feels like questioning the very order of things. We envision ourselves as the steadfast provider, and in return, we expect a steadfast partner. This expectation isn't born of arrogance, but of a genuine desire for a reciprocal, meaningful connection where devotion is the reward for devotion. However, lived experience and observable reality reveal a far more complex and often darker truth. The painful lesson many men learn too late is that for a significant number of women, loyalty is not directed toward the man as an individual, but is instead tethered almost exclusively to her emotional state. Her sense of commitment is intrinsically linked to how you make her feel in any given moment. This feeling could be excitement, security, happiness, or comfort. When that feeling is strong, her devotion appears absolute. She speaks in terms of forever and always, and in that moment, she genuinely means it. The illusion is perfect, but emotions are, by their very nature, fluid and transient. They are weather, not climate. When those feelings inevitably shift, as they always do, the loyalty that was built upon them evaporates like smoke. What a man believed was a solid foundation was, in reality, structure built on sand. This fundamental disconnect is why so many men are utterly blindsided by betrayal. They believed in an unconditional contract, a promise sealed not just with words but with years of shared history and sacrifice. They operated on a logical framework where effort and commitment yield a corresponding result. But in her world, the contract has an invisible emotional clause. It is void the moment the feelings that initiated it change. Her forever does not mean for all time, but rather for as long as this feeling persists. This is not loyalty in the sense that men understand it. It is conditional partnership. It is convenience. And convenience is a fair-weather friend, the first thing to disappear when difficulty arises. The man is left standing in the wreckage, not just grieving the loss of the relationship, but grappling with the shattering of a core belief he built his life upon. He didn't just lose a partner. He lost the story he believed to be true. One of the most profound and painful errors a man can make is to mistake the passage of time for the presence of genuine loyalty. He sees a relationship that has lasted for years, perhaps even decades, and he interprets that longevity as irrefutable proof of a deep, unwavering bond. He looks at the shared history, the anniversaries celebrated, the daily routines built together, and he concludes logically that this endurance is the very definition of devotion. He believes that the sheer investment of time itself creates an unbreakable contract, a mutual understanding that they are in this for the long haul, no matter what challenges arise. This perspective is rooted in a masculine principle of building. You invest time and effort into a project, and that investment adds value, strength, and permanence. He applies the same logic to his relationship, assuming her continued presence is her form of investment. However, this is a catastrophic miscalculation of the underlying motivation. For many women, her staying was never an act of unconditional devotion. It was a continuous calculation based on favorable conditions. She remained because the circumstances aligned with her needs for stability, emotional fulfillment, attention, financial security, or social status. You provided an environment that felt safe, comfortable, and beneficial. In this state, the relationship functions smoothly, and her loyalty appears identical to the real thing. The man sees a devoted partner, but what he often has is a satisfied beneficiary. The critical, soul-crushing revelation comes when those conditions inevitably shift. If he loses his job, his health fails. He goes through a period of depression. Or he simply can no longer maintain the high level of provision or excitement he once did. The facade crumbles. Her departure at this moment exposes the truth. What he thought was loyalty was merely conditional attachment based on convenience. This dynamic is further obscured by the confusion of dependency with devotion. A woman may cling to a man, need his constant presence, express that she can't live without him, and revolve her world around him. To a man, this feels like the ultimate validation of his importance and her loyalty. He thinks, she is so devoted to me that her entire existence is tied to mine. But brother, that is not loyalty. That is often fear masquerading as love. It is the fear of being alone, the fear of financial insecurity, the fear of starting over, or the fear of losing the social identity that being in a relationship provides. She is attached to the safety net you represent, not necessarily to the architect of that net. This is a crucial distinction. Her dependency is a form of selfish survival, not selfless devotion. The moment she perceives that another man or even a life alone can provide a comparable or better level of comfort and security with less hassle, that dependency, which he mistook for loyalty, evaporates. She wasn't loyal to you. She was loyal to the comfort you created. And when that comfort is threatened or found elsewhere, she moves on, leaving the man not only heartbroken, but also bewildered, wondering how someone so dependent could so easily walk away. The initial stages of a relationship are often characterized by a powerful and convincing performance. A woman, consciously or not, will frequently mirror a man's deepest desires, presenting herself as the embodiment of the loyal, devoted partner he has always sought. She will speak the language of forever, swear unwavering support through any hardship, and paint a vivid picture of a shared, unbreakable future. This performance is not necessarily malicious or even entirely deliberate. It is often a natural byproduct of her own intense emotions in the moment. However, its function is potent. It secures commitment, a ring, a shared home, or the stable lifestyle she desires. She acts devoted because in that emotional high, she feels devoted. And she understands that this performance is the key to locking in the security and status she seeks. The man, seeing his ideals reflected back at him, lowers his guard, believing he has finally found the exception, the one who truly understands the meaning of loyalty. The tragic shift occurs once the transaction feels complete. The commitment is secured, the lifestyle is established, and the performance, having achieved its goal, begins to fade. This is when the conditions for her continued presence, previously hidden beneath the surface, begin to emerge. The language changes. The woman who swore she'd be there no matter what now begins to articulate a new set of rules. Phrases like, "I don't feel loved anymore," "We've grown apart," or "You've changed," become common. What she is often truly saying is that she is no longer entertained, satisfied, or receiving the same level of emotional stimulus or comfort. The loyalty she professed was never a deep-seated principle. It was a transaction disguised as devotion. And once the terms feel fulfilled from her side, her incentive to maintain the act disappears. This is why so many men are utterly blindsided after marriage or a long-term commitment. They believe they had secured a fundamental bond, but in reality, they secured a performance that has now reached its final curtain. The most disorienting part of this process is the subsequent justification. When she decides to leave, she does not frame it within the man's framework of loyalty and betrayal. Instead, she weaponizes the language of emotional authenticity to justify her departure. She will say she is following her heart, choosing happiness, or finally being true to herself. In her emotional framework, these are not excuses. They are the highest form of validation. Her feelings have changed, and to act against them would, in her mind, be dishonest. Therefore, leaving is not an act of betrayal, but an act of courage and self-honesty. This reframing is devastatingly effective. It leaves the man not only grieving the loss of the relationship, but also completely guilty. If he argues, he is portrayed as controlling, as trying to force her to live a lie. He is left to grapple with the absurd reality that abandoning vows and promises is seen as a virtuous act, while expecting them to be honored is viewed as oppression. He demanded accountability from a person operating on an entirely different moral code, one where feelings are the ultimate truth and previous commitments are invalidated by their change. The fragile emotion-based concept of loyalty is not an anomaly. It is actively cultivated and reinforced by the broader systems of modern culture and society. A woman's inclination to prioritize transient feelings over steadfast commitment is constantly encouraged by an environment that glorifies self-gratification and provides endless avenues for escape. Social media, dating apps, and digital connectedness have created a perpetual marketplace of options. She is no longer comparing her relationship to a handful of local possibilities, but to a curated global highlight reel of seemingly perfect men and idealized romances. Her feed is flooded with images of lavish vacations, grand gestures, and flawlessly happy couples, creating an illusion that everyone else is living a more exciting, more fulfilling life. This constant exposure breeds dissatisfaction not because her relationship is failing, but because reality can never compete with a fantasy. It teaches her that any moment of boredom, discomfort, or mundane struggle is not a normal part of a shared journey to be overcome, but a glaring sign that she is settling and should seek a better option. This cultural narrative is powerfully underscored and enabled by legal and financial structures that actively reward disloyalty. The modern family court system, in many jurisdictions, has become a machine that incentivizes the dissolution of relationships rather than their preservation. A woman considering leaving is often aware, on some level, that the system is designed to cushion her fall. She can anticipate financial support in the form of alimony, claim to marital assets, and primary custody of children, which translates into continued child support. This safety net removes the natural consequences of abandonment. The immense financial and social risk that once served as a check on impulsive behavior has been systematically eliminated. Walking away from a marriage is no longer a leap into the unknown. It is often a calculated transition into a state-supported lifestyle funded by the man she is leaving behind. This system doesn't just allow for emotion-based decisions. It financially subsidizes them, making disloyalty a pragmatically sound, if morally bankrupt, choice. Furthermore, the cultural dialogue surrounding relationships has been completely redefined to champion this individualistic ethos. Popular psychology, media, culture bombard women with messages that reframe selfishness as self-care and betrayal as personal growth. Mantras like "you deserve to be happy," "love shouldn't be hard," and "don't settle" are repeated ad nauseum. The profound, hard-won value of building something lasting through discipline, sacrifice, and weathering storms is dismissed as an antiquated trap. The message is clear. Your feelings are the ultimate compass, and any person or commitment that causes them to falter is an obstacle to your truth. In this environment, loyalty becomes a weakness, a sign that one isn't brave enough to pursue their every desire. A woman is not taught to examine her own contributions to a relationship's struggles or to value the depth that comes from overcoming adversity. She is taught that her happiness is the sole and supreme objective, and that any mechanism, including walking away from a committed partner, is justified in its pursuit. The system doesn't just allow the illusion of loyalty to thrive. It provides the tools, the justification, and the reward structure for it. The ultimate power of this illusion, the belief in a woman's inherent, unwavering loyalty, exists only if a man consciously or unconsciously chooses to buy into it. The solution to this pervasive trap is not to descend into bitterness or misanthropy, but to adopt a position of ruthless, unflinching clarity. This begins with the fundamental understanding that words, no matter how passionately delivered, are not ironclad contracts. They are snapshots of a fleeting emotional state. To build your life, your future, and your sense of security upon them is an act of profound self-deception. Protect yourself by rejecting poetic promises that lack the corroboration of consistent action. Trust must be viewed not as a gift to be given freely at the outset, but as a privilege that is earned slowly, through demonstrated behavior over time, and most importantly, through adversity. This shift in perspective requires a new method of judgment. You must learn to evaluate a woman not by who she is during the peaks of the relationship when emotions are high and life is easy, but by her, patterns of behavior during the inevitable valleys, How does she respond to discomfort? Does she lean in and communicate, or does she withdraw and sulk? How does she handle sacrifice? Does she give freely, or does she keep a mental ledger of everything she's owed? How does she react to your struggles? Does she offer support and strength, or does she become distant and critical, repulsed by perceived weakness? True loyalty is not proven in the sunshine. It is forged and revealed in the storm. It is a choice made repeatedly when it is inconvenient, unglamorous, and offers no immediate reward. If you never consciously test this resilience, you will never know if what you have is real or merely a fair-weather arrangement. This process of protection is, at its core, an internal one. It demands that you build your life upon a foundation that is entirely your mission, your values, your purpose, and your brotherhood. A man who centers his existence around a woman's approval and presence makes himself vulnerable to catastrophic collapse when she leaves. Conversely, a man who is rooted in his own principles and is actively building a life he is proud of, with or without a partner, becomes unshakable. His value is self-determined, not externally validated. This inner strength is your ultimate shield. It allows you to engage in relationships from a place of abundance and choice, not neediness and fear. You no longer need her loyalty to feel complete. And this very independence is what allows you to discern its authentic presence without the desperate fog of projection. In this clarity and self-possession, you find a profound sense of freedom. You are finally released from the cycle of shock, betrayal, and devastation. When a woman's feelings change and she leaves, you're not blindsided because you understood the nature of the agreement from the beginning. You recognize the possibility of impermanence. This isn't cynicism. It is pragmatic wisdom that allows you to appreciate the good times without mortgaging your future to them. The man who no longer believes in the illusion is the man who cannot be manipulated by it. He observes actions, not just words. He values demonstrated character over emotional promises. This is the man who commands respect not through demands, but through his unwavering commitment to his own reality. And ironically, this is the very kind of man that women are instinctively drawn to, not because he needs them, but because they can sense a strength they cannot control, a strength that offers the possibility of a real partnership. Rather than the burden of being his entire foundation,